Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Sunderland Board of Selectmen. Please note the new time for anybody who's calling, watching in the future at 7 o'clock. You missed it. We start at 6:30 these meetings to see how this works out for a variety of reasons. That said, Lacey gave us the short countdown. It was originally 5, 4. We heard 3, 2, go! So here we are. Tonight we're going to have a conversation with our folks from FCAT. Chris Collins is here, talking about a capital program. We have Chief Gilbert and a request for Academy. I think there's a conversation going to be about Academy and vehicle usage and a waiver. We have a couple of board updates, town administrator updates, and Happy New Year to everybody, first and foremost. So, 2016, it's going to be grand. My official prediction. Okay, first up, we have Chris Collins, Director of FCAT. He wants to talk about capital, relocating, and funding said project.
Well, first of all, I've always found it's better not to argue with Lacey about anything. So, I understand I feel your pain there. The reason I'm coming before you along with Tom Zimnowski from my board of directors is we are working on a plan to move out of our current facility. If you've ever been to our FCAT studios, you know that it's not really a studio, much more than a retrofitted storefront that is woefully inadequate for our needs. So for the past few months since I came on board as general manager, we've been assessing options, and we've whittled it down to a few possibilities. But whatever we do is going to require a certain amount of a capital investment. So in meeting with the board, we talked about possibilities, scenarios, and I don't think we're going to be able to fund what we want to do out of operating funds. It's pretty obvious. So we're going to have to take on some kind of debt. But one of the scenarios we kicked around, and one of the reasons we want to come in front of the boards of selectmen in the 4 towns, is that we kind of feel like to be able to do what we want to do and to be able to get the funding we need to get, we are going to need a substantial chunk of money from the capital reserves for PEG access. So what we're asking, and we're trying to find out and gauge the feelings of the various boards, is would you favor a scenario where we used half of the money currently in the PEG access capital fund for Sunderland for this effort to find a new home base of operations? Now, I've met with Deerfield, Whately, and Conway. All 3 of those boards have agreed in principle. And we have a couple of scenarios on the table, but nothing I want to get into too much chapter and verse on, because it would weaken our negotiating stance in at least one of the cases. Now, we may not need that money. It depends on which scenario we go with. It depends on what the price of whatever it is we do. But what we're looking for is some kind of an idea of where you stand on the idea of parting with half of that PEG access money. Like I said, we need to get out of there. We need to get into a home base of operations that allows us to take this station to the level I believe it can go to. We do a tremendous amount of work already in a very cramped space. If you've never been in there probably for a live shoot or a studio shoot, but it looks better on camera than it does when you're in there. It's a very strange building. It has no heat. It has no air. It has an air conditioning now. It has no ADA access, so it's not fully accessible.
Just those steps in the front.
Steps, right? And those just got redone, thank God, because someone was going to die on those things, and Leo took care of that. But we really don't want to be there any longer than we have to be, and we're trying to talk about various scenarios that would get us out of there. So we come to you, we sent you a letter and asked what your thoughts were on being willing to part with half of that money if it comes to that.
Tom Z, what do you think?
I'm all for it, because right now, currently, that we've been, throughout the past 3 or 4 years, we've been dwindling back. I've been cutting back. More funding's been going up to FCAT because of the work that they've been doing here. And also understanding that they're in a situation up there that, yeah, it is kind of pathetic. Well, classified as pathetic. And the only way of doing something is to take a look at what else is available, and you really can't do any negotiating or anything unless you start getting some funding behind. I think Chris and the staff members have done due diligence where they've looked around at places, but also, you know, we're coming up with different, at the last couple of board meetings, we came up with a couple of different scenarios, and yeah, it could possibly work, but the fact is that, you know, we didn't have that agreement or this conversation to take and say, gee, if we did this and we did that, well, how do we know we can take and do this if the boards and the towns won't agree to it? So just an understanding, and so that we could take and start taking possibly the next step.
I don't want to move in any direction without some kind of an idea where the board stand. I wouldn't do that to you guys. We have too much respect for you. And I'm not going to put the organization in a position where we're going to sink ourselves in a bad investment. And so it's entirely possible, depending on which scenario we choose, that capital money will probably equal about half up from the 4 towns of what we'll need to have to be able to do what we're looking at doing. So I guess I want to get your thoughts on it.
Sure. David, what do you think?
Yeah, in theory, yeah. I'm just wondering, like, how you tap into that half of that capital. Like, what's your game plan for the capital in general?
Well, what we want
terms of,
to
like,
do is
equipment.
we want to get the money into an account. We're going to set up a separate capital account for this specific purpose. And then, depending on what the dollar figure is, and depending on what the various scenarios cost, we can game out what we're going to have to finance, because we're going to have to finance part of it.
Yep.
What we're going to use for down payment, what we're going to use for renovation, because there's going to have to be some renovation. None of the facilities we're looking at is by any means perfect. There's going to have to be some retrofitting done. And, you know, I've never done one of these projects from soup to nuts, but I can tell you that I've covered enough of them and I've been exposed enough to know that all kinds of things can pop out for expenses that you just don't know are there.
Yep.
We would like to stay centrally located in the South Deerfield area. That seems to be equidistant to all 4 communities. We have some options in that regard, but nothing that is in stone, and I'm not going to really know until we know where all 4 towns stand and what we are in terms of a dollar figure. And there's other issues with the capital budget, which I'll talk about in a second, that have to do with other expenses we've incurred. But I'm not looking for you to necessarily vote a dollar figure tonight. What I'm asking is basically for a sense of the board.
Tom, we've been through a fair amount of construction before. Lease agreements.
Well, the only thing I can say is, first, we're probably the only town that have put our chief of police next to the FCAT director.
He hasn't drawn his weapon, for the record. by the way, anybody's watching.
But he does have the handcuffs at ready.
Yeah.
I guess the first thing is when FCAT first moved to their present location, I don't think our board ever thought that was a good idea for many reasons. We've watched the rental rates start low, but then like clockwork they've been ratcheting up, and we kind of knew that was going to happen. It was, we'll lull you in and we'll increase the prices. I don't, you know, I struggle with granting a free use of the money, only because I do have one concern about the location. I thought it was interesting, well, we have to stay in the South Deerfield because it's central to everything. Well, if you're in Conway, South Deerfield's not central to everybody. So, you know, if Conway's involved and Sunderland Deerfield, Whiteley are involved, I don't think you should restrict it to one. I would say I wouldn't limit my search to a 500-yard radius from the present site.
Yeah.
I would say that you have to remember that FCAT serves 4 communities. We want to get the best bang for our buck. Now, I also know that we have a lot of, and the way it was supposed to work from day one is FCAT was supposed to interact with Frontier. It has at times, I mean, we go up and down with that interaction. So I guess I would also say that while I don't necessarily think it has to be in South Deerfield, I think it should be near Frontier, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for kids and the school to piggyback onto what FCAT's doing.
No, we agree. I mean, that's one of the reasons we want to stay in South Deerfield, is we're near the school.
Man, don't tell me you're just doing it because you want to stay in the
No.
central.
We
Now,
want to be.
if you told me you wanted to be there because of the proximity to the high school, that's fine. But I hear the terms that you said used in other conversations our towns are having on
Yeah.
sort of thing, and it needs to go where it's going to serve the purpose of FCAT.
And I think in some people's minds, it would be better if we were even in Frontier. But the conversations that I've had, they're not really willing to do that. They don't have the space, that's what I've been hearing, and I'm not sure logistically how it would work. One of the things we want to do is we want to remain an independent entity. What I mean by that is, we could probably move into a town hall, we could probably move into a town office space, but that's not really optimal for what we're trying to do. We're trying to be our own kind of entity. So, we've looked at a lot of different things, and, we didn't just look in South Deerfield. We looked up 5 and 10, we looked in Whately, we looked at the Wormels building at one point, we looked at this building at one point. We just kind of feel like for where we are and what we do, and Frontier, the proximity did factor into it. I wouldn't say it was the central reason, but it was certainly one of them. We have a lot of activity from Frontier. A lot of kids from Frontier come over. We have a Monday sessions we have with them. So we want to maintain that connection. And we have a guy over there who's doing that for us, and Kevin Murphy.
I think your location also depends on what kind of lines you've got, right, from Comcast? As I recall in the negotiations, that's another factor.
It's less of an issue because our server right now is located in the Deerfield Town Hall.
Okay.
So wherever we're going to be, it's going to be remote locations.
Still
So that's
out of
not
there
really
anyway.
as much of an issue.
Okay.
Plus, the new contract, which is about to be signed, is going to contain some language and some extra monies to update
for
a lot
that.
of that
Good.
technology and
We've
infrastructure.
built capital into the license.
Yeah, we're actually going to get, the next capital influx we get when that contract is signed has to go to buy a new server, because our broadcast server is on its last legs and it needs to get replaced.
Took a long time to get to that point in the
Yeah, but we
contract
finally
negotiations,
identified, I
yeah.
think, a cutting-edge technology that is affordable, but also vastly more functional than what we use now.
Nice.
And it's actually built by a company called Telview, and the system was designed by people who do exactly what Lacey and I do.
Nice.
They designed this specifically for access stations. So we're going to get that done when the contract gets done. And speaking of the contract and the capital funding, I want to hand deliver this to you.
Okay.
We have incurred, no, don't shoot me, please. We have incurred some legal expenses as a result of negotiating that contract, mostly legal consulting services. And what we've done is, we've already paid those bills to get those bills behind us, but now we have to backfill our budget based on those numbers. So what I have in there is Sunderland's share of that.
Okay.
Whately's already gotten their invoice. Deerfield just got theirs. Whately just paid their check today. So take a look at that. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. But that should come out of the PEG Access Capital Fund.
Okay. That's negotiated. That's pretty straightforward.
Exactly. And the third thing, and the final thing, before I let the chief take over, is our open house.
Oh, nice.
Is on the 21st. If you could post that in Town Hall.
This one, Lacey, right there?
Hold that up.
Yeah. You gotta turn it around to get it on camera. It's January 21st from 4 to 6 p.m. You can come and see exactly how substandard our facility is right now. Actually, no, we're proud to be able to show off what we do. We've got a nice video presentation that John Prosperi is working on for the year in review. We're gonna have some door prizes, some refreshments.
Nice.
You can come meet the staff, join the organization. We want to encourage people who want to be board members, because we're always looking for new blood, not to replace Tom, of course. But, we need people to come in and join the board, because we have people that are cycling out whatsoever. So
Okay. And date and time again?
it's January 21st from 4 to 6 p.m. for the open house, and at 6:30 we have the annual meeting,
Oh, good.
which is open to the public, and people can actually be nominated for the board at that
That's the
time.
director's board.
That's the board of directors, right?
If I could circle back, Tom, anything else to cover with respect to the concept of accessing capital for studio relocating before I weigh in on it?
Well, I would hope, it'd be nice if we could have been presented with the new home search criteria. What are those criteria? Size, location, expense, operational expense, projected budget of the facility 5 years, 10 years down the road. you know, when we try to look at putting together a building, you know, we try to understand what and again, you're probably gonna look for something that's already pre-existing versus building new, so it'd be kind of nice to understand. And I guess when I go out, and again, sometimes when I think I know procurement, it nips me in the butt, but wouldn't they have to put out because they're a public entity, wouldn't you have to put out an RFP?
I don't think we're subject to 30B.
No?
That's my understanding. I could be wrong.
Told you that.
I think telecommunications is exempt from
Yeah, it is.
30B.
I'd be interested, because I was wondering, you know, because I was wondering why you wouldn't have to put together your criteria and set that out there, because you may not know what's available.
Well, technically, FCAT's a private nonprofit corporation, so
But you're using taxpayer dollars.
now we're using Comcast funds. That's the money that comes to FCAT comes from Comcast.
It's taxpayer dollars, though. It comes
Comcast
from our coffer, it comes from our town, it goes.
I mean, right now, the money goes through the towns, because that's the way that it was set up. But this is not, it's not like the Commonwealth comes in and gives us a stipend. This comes from Comcast customers. Every Comcast customer exactly has.
You look on your bill, there's
pays
part of
a
the
certain amount
subscriber
of money
fee in there. Yeah.
for public access, and that's where the dollars go.
Allocated through the license
I
agreement.
see what you're saying, Tom.
If no one wants, I mean, I don't care if you guys go to jail. It doesn't bother. I mean, I don't need to help you. I mean, you can go on your own. I just find, I don't know why you wouldn't tell us what you're looking in a position. I guess.
I'll be happy to tell you if you want to go to executive session. I'll give you the exact ideas we have, but
But that should have been for future. That should have been presented in our package, so that we know what you're looking for. So that we would know you're looking for 2,200 square feet, plus or minus, that you're looking for a one-story facility, that you're looking within proximity of Frontier, that it's, it has.
Certain utility requirements.
It's ADA compliant, and you go through the list of things, and that's what we would do. And see, we work in the public domain.
Yes, you do.
And you guys are public. You may think you're not, but I would recommend that you treat yourself as a public domain, which I'm not hearing yet. I would treat yourself as a public domain and keep us all informed of what you're trying to do.
Being on the board just for about 4 or 5 months at this point here, and conversations like this have been going around about the wish list type thing, and it's funny that you know, when Tom, what you were talking about putting together, you know, a document of some sort, you know, I'm looking at, gee, any place that would have handicap accessibility, 2 bathrooms at work, that you could actually eat, a loading dock maybe and something. And, you know, the other conversation came up about relatively close to Frontier, and, you know, yeah, whatever. Conversation came up to the point where if it was beyond the center of the center of South Deerfield, that, and, you know, with Kevin Murphy and the possibility of, with his team or crew or his class that would meet after school or something, the possibility of a shuttle bus. You know, the Frontier has a van that would 9, 10, 12 people or whatever, like this would be more than big enough to accommodate things. Shuttle them from point A to point B. When you're finished, shuttle them back, and unless the parents come and pick them up at point B.
Sure.
And, but, you know, definitely, Tom, I think we have a lot of brainstorming to take and do, but also to take and, you know, easy enough to take and put a document together in that. And, but, you know, it seems like a couple of the places, you know, it's always, geez, you know, if we had that place, what would we need to take and do? But, you know, everything's kind of, you know, flux at this point, and it's, you know, but it's just a starting point.
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time researching potential locations. And I can tell you that there isn't a single one of them that fit our needs 100%. What we're looking for is a space that is accessible. We're looking for a space that allows for a studio, that allows for editing bays, that allows for handicapped accessible bathrooms, that, you know, and in our price range. I mean, it's not a galloping shock that a lot of the real estate around here is pretty expensive.
Yeah, all commercial real estate.
So,
tough.
I mean, you'd be amazed at some of the numbers that got thrown around. And so we've whittled down what we can whittle down, and now we have to figure out, okay, it may come down to, we may not be able to afford our first or second choice. We may be in there for another year. Leo's been good to us. He hasn't, that's a pretty reasonable rate. But it's a terrible building for what we want to do. And we really have a lot of plans and things we want to bump up, and we can't do it in that building. So I hear what you're saying, and as soon as I can give you specifics, I will.
I would weigh in. Tom, you want to go ahead?
I'll sit there, sir.
Say I would weigh in only in that, the request for funds it doesn't precede the concept, but it precedes the details.
Yes.
And in at this side of the table, it's always been a sticking point about, well, if you just give us the money, we're going to do that.
Right.
And as a board, we haven't gone forward with a project that hasn't been defined, spelled out. I wrote down things like designer selection, budget, capital budget, lease agreement, tick, 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 tick. And I know that in the negotiating phase, that's hard to come forward because there are other people or other parties involved. I get all that. But also, it's equally difficult for certainly a member of this board, certainly this member of this board, to allocate without that expense line to actually run it against. So conceptually, I recognize the need for the space and the need for some change and appreciate what FCAT is doing currently and how we got here has been rocky. We've got some history about just give us the money and we'll do it. We've been a bit of stick in the mud about that. That said, it's not out of a mistrust in any shape or form, certainly from my part. But it would be nice to see some linearity that says, listen, here's kind of the timeline and the goal. Right. And we're pretty sure it's going to be in this plus minus 10, whatever, plus minus 10%, 5%, whatever it ends up being. So that's my bet. The concept of moving and finding a better space, go for it. That, as you were saying earlier, Chris, the reality starts rolling in. You go, damn, maybe we are here for another year while we formulate the full plan.
And wherever we go, it's dependent on the dollars.
Right.
It's dependent on the dollars, logistics. I am certainly not going to be the first general manager to bankrupt this nonprofit on a bad business deal.
Right.
But what we're looking for is an idea of where the board stands. And I think you've pretty much given it to us. And I can go back to my board Thursday and say, okay, here's where we stand with the various towns.
But I think Tom brought up the excellent point that,
that is a good point.
To take and prepare a document and also get a good, we have a lot of the numbers.
Right.
And then just to take and prepare and say, okay, in a scenario such as this.
Yep. Because there will be capital, then there's going to be the operating expense component.
Right, exactly.
And there's nothing surprising to us. I mean, FCAT's been looking for the last few years
Exactly.
for a space. So, I mean, we know about that.
Yeah.
Well, we may have a couple of possibilities that may work. But if the numbers don't work, we're not going to do it. I mean, as bad as that place is, I'll stay there until we have the right place for us. But I appreciate, you're the first board that actually brought that issue up, and I actually appreciate that. And it gives me something to work with when I go back and talk to the board. Okay.
This board probably has more experience with building projects.
Hey, I hear you. And I may actually ask you for some advice, because this is the first one of these bad boys I've done. And so.
It's perfect. Well, thanks so much. Anything else to cover?
And please come to the open house so you
Yes.
can see for yourself why we have to get out of there.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it. We'll keep the conversation moving.
Yes.
All right, thank
I
you.
use conversation
Am I going
twice
to see
in
you
one
later
night.
this
I
week?
hate that word.
Am I going to see you later this week?
What, filming in a hole?
That's a good one.
I haven't heard
I
anything
think
back,
that's
but,
better.
except from you, but we'll take it from there. Yeah, hopefully the weather's good, I'll go out, especially with some shoes.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Chris.
Hi, Mr. Collins.
Okay, Chief, we have Chief Gilbert's here to talk with us about officer training. And Chief, the reason, I think you maybe saw the email exchanges between the town administrator and the board about, who could come in, what the request was, why to bring the department head in.
Right, he's interested in going to the full-time academy. He wants to put himself through. We haven't done this before, but let me say that we have with part-time officers. We've sponsored part-time officers who have put themselves through the Reserve Academy. Yep. I think you got a copy of the waiver. Yep. And basically what that says, and it's not basically what it says, is that he puts himself through the academy, he pays for everything, he's absolutely responsible for everything. The town is not liable for anything. What the academy requires is a sponsor and name only with this waiver. And that's all it would be. The only thing that was a little bit of a catch was a vehicle for a week, which was, and it's in here where it says if they don't have a vehicle or provided a vehicle, and he says even if Sunderland didn't approve of one, that he would be able to get one, because what they're saying is if you don't have a vehicle for defensive driving, you're gone. Doesn't make sense to me, but it does and it doesn't. I mean, when I went through the academy, we had some guys who shared a vehicle for defensive driving. I, to be honest, don't want to give up a vehicle for a week. I don't want to, put it down there for a week for defensive driving.
These would be in-service vehicles now you're talking about. You're not talking about taking the Holden down there for defensive driving. You're talking about a cruiser.
No, not necessarily.
Oh,
what
okay.
they're looking for is a vehicle. And Ben Peters actually had an idea and had gone to George, the highway super, and asked if he could use the old
patrol car.
The old cruiser.
Yeah.
George doesn't have a problem with it. What he had asked is that the board approve that. As far as, being sponsored, it would be in name only.
Okay.
Again, it points it all out and everything where, he's responsible. The town is not liable in any way. And also, he would have to get his signature notarized, which gives a little bit more strength. And it would, again, just be in name only.
Okay.
And I believe Sherry even checked with Maya as far as.
I saw that, the email. Yep.
And Maya said he'd be fine.
Yep.
He's indemnified regardless. It's part of duty.
Right.
Right.
Other departments have done it, and I've read through it, and there's nothing that sticks out that says, oh, wait a minute, except for the vehicle part, where I'm a little leery on putting one of my cruisers down there for a week.
I would think that would be that would be a concern expressed by the board as well.
Yeah.
That said, Chief, if I could start with a few questions. The first would be, is there, other than sponsorship in name only, and I understand Academy sponsorship comes with somebody supporting it. I get that, town, agency, or other, right? Makes perfect sense.
Right.
In our existing department policies, is there anything that says we will not, cannot, subjective, objective, criteria? Nothing in there, okay. And I don't know if there should be or not. It just came to mind as I was driving. I'm like, wait a minute, I wonder. So maybe something we can extend the question about the future. The second was because this is a full-time sponsoring for a full-time academy?
For a full-time academy, right.
Are there any impacts or concerns with the existing labor agreement?
No. And there's no cost.
Okay.
Again, they pay everything.
Yep.
Whatever they need,
Right.
they purchase.
Again, I just would not want, I would want to not fall
Sure.
into the trap of
right.
having the labor agreement come back from whoever, and they go, oh, geez, and by the way,
No.
when I say they, I mean whoever.
No, as a matter of fact, we're not paying. We're not paying him.
Okay.
And others have done this. They're on their own.
Yep.
And there are individuals that I know of who haven't even been hired, or even like Ben's part-time.
Yep.
There are individuals who've gone there who aren't even part-time. They've put themselves through the full-time academy, hoping to get hired somewhere.
Okay.
So we put the last.
Both were part-time, right?
The last person that went through full-time was Josh Harris, but he was hired.
Right.
He was already hired here as a full-time officer. Had worked here for a little bit and then gone to the academy.
Okay.
So,
Those are questions I have. David, anything from you?
No, I think you covered, everything that I was thinking about. So, and my biggest question was, like policy updates.
This
down
is
the
something that
road,
we
just
have
in-
to take a look at, even if it's in the handbook, it's
Yeah.
like, oh geez, and
I think
yeah.
it's something we got to address somewhere,
sure.
just for future.
Tom, what are you thinking?
I know it's very hard to get, for a young individual to get involved in many career paths. I would hate, I guess, you probably do you have to sign an application for him, or?
There's, well, I sign,
And
There's-
why I ask that, Chief, is because I would assume that to go to full-time
department
academy,
administrator.
you're attesting to his competency and demeanor to become an officer?
right.
To me, that's the most important thing, Chief,
Yeah.
that what you're telling us right now, that he's working for us, he's doing a good job, and you feel that he'll be a good police officer down the road.
Absolutely.
If you're telling me that, then what I'm saying, just to say the town of Sunderland is gonna be his sponsor, because we have to put something on a form that's not, we would afford that to any student or whatever we could
Right.
do. I don't have a problem with that.
Oh, I
But as
would,
long as I'm looking to you, as long as you're attesting to his, and I assume you are because you're a part-time officer to begin with in our town, as long as you're attesting to his demeanor, his qualities as an individual to be a successful police officer, that's fine for me.
absolutely. And I agree with you as far as just somebody coming along and saying, here, will you sponsor me? I'm like, no, I don't know you.
Right.
I haven't worked with you, I have no idea.
Right.
Nothing against the person personally, but if I don't know them, haven't worked with them, don't know their history.
Yep.
Ben has been with us for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll fill in whenever he can. He's worked some pretty crazy hours. He's come in at last minute notice, and he does a good job. He's out there, he also does well in the community, which is big for me. You better do well out there in the community, because as you know, I'm big on community policing.
Right.
And he does do well there.
Good.
And he's had good interactions with some community people. So,
Well, I would say, Chief, that if he goes to the full, not that the part-time training isn't enough, but I would say that the full-time training must be more in-depth.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
a lot more.
that would make it advantageous to the town of Sunderland to have someone like that even as a part-time officer, it'd be advantageous for the town to have
Sure.
someone like that.
He'll learn a lot more, and he'll be more educated, and, it's definitely a plus for him to be able to go to this.
Strengthen his skill set.
Absolutely.
Chief, if I could just circle back to when you first started there a minute ago about we have a working relationship. He's been here for a period of time. Staff member's been here for a period of time, and without falling into any traps about files or anything like that. That was the beginning of the framework of a policy.
Sure.
We'd be happy to sponsor if,
right.
Yeah.
3 months in service, I'll make it up, whatever. 3 months in service, all, positive reviews,
Sure. Yeah, this is a first for me as far as the full-time sponsoring, so, it's new to me also, but I
That's an easy
absolutely
one.
agree
Yeah,
that
just pull a
that would
framework
be,
out of it.
yeah,
Perfect.
a good thing to, come up with.
Okay, any questions of the board, any more discussion?
I think I'm good.
If not, you need to vote of the board? You're the department head signing it.
Yeah,
Does it-
it would be good just to have, and then to let him know,
And the vehicle as well? The vehicle allocation? Okay, so is there a motion to sponsor the part-time officer for the full-time academy?
Motion.
As defined in the, submittal by the chief.
Correct. As defined.
Because in that, we're
What's it?
sponsoring in name only, but he's picking up all the costs, et cetera. So as defined in the, and if we could attach that letter to the minutes.
That'd be perfect. Great, okay, with that amended motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, please. Chief, thank you. Again,
Great,
that's to
thank
echo
you.
a point Tom made earlier. professional development,
Yeah,
always a plus.
yeah, and he's working hard at that.
Good.
And it's obvious. So, giving him this opportunity, I think will be a good thing for him.
Right. We'll make sure we find out what his grades are.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks so much, Chief.
Great, thank you.
Happy New Year again.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, we have minutes ahead of us for December 21st.
Mr. Chair, if I could, was there a motion made to appoint Mr. Benjamin as a interim chief, or just as the fire chief until,
No, it was supposed to be chief until the end of the current term.
not interim?
Not interim.
So can I make a motion to amend the attached minutes and to remove the word interim before any reference to Mr. Benjamin's position?
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, because
It
we
is
actually did
noted
talk
in
about that, yeah.
In the bottom there,
Yeah.
did you see the note
Yeah,
recommended
be the
that the
chief.
motion
Under
be
the chief
amended to appoint Steve Benjamin, fire
Yeah.
chief? Okay.
Yeah,
No, so the minutes actually capture the dialogue
Yeah.
well.
right, because we
Was
went,
that
we
okay?
discussed that, I
Yeah,
remember,
okay.
I remember that discussion, yep.
The last sentence actually has.
Yeah, I see that.
Just what you're describing.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion then.
Second.
Yeah, motion made and seconded. That's a good catch on both parts. Nice minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, please. Yeah, 2 pages of minutes. What did we do? That's good stuff.
Yep.
Okay, board updates. Tom, you have anything?
South County EMS is working on their budget right now. Hopefully, it's gonna go different than last year. A little more savvy in the way, our director's a little more savvy in the way that the process works. Also, we kind of clarified, I think the town administrators made a presentation to the Board of Oversight a couple weeks ago with the definition or defining what the administration costs are going to be, so that should not be a question. Last year, it's like we all voted a number, and then all the last, I think in April, somebody came back and said, oh, by the way, they're going to be these costs. So I think it's, that portion of it has settled down more, so we'll have a more accurate, we'll have a budget like everybody else does, on time, and I don't think things will be thrown in later.
Right. Sudden developments.
Well, because everything's starting to get known now, so.
You also got a full year in kind of the full year in the life, if you will.
And again, that's what we're trying to say also is that, yeah, we're starting to get understanding how, and again, it's a new director, it's a new thing, we're starting to understand how the fiscal year works, and it's a little different. South County Senior Center, we have a new director, Marlene, who started not too long ago. She's basically, if someone's interested in the senior center but may be a little concerned about coming when other people are there, if you want, on Tuesdays and Thursdays mornings, she's going to be available to open up so you can come in and see what the South County Senior Center is all about. You can sit down and have a nice conversation with her and let her know what your expectations are. Also, she's starting to outreach to, we have a database. When you sign in, you have to, there's data that has to be taken, and people that may not be showing up over the years that used to, she's going to try to contact and find out why. And sometimes what we've found is that someone may not be able to, they may not have the ability to get to the center any longer. So if that, well, you could be getting a ride with a person, and that person either moves or loses their car, passes away, and all of a sudden your ride to the facility is gone.
Right, right.
So she wants to look at those people and contact those people, so she's going to send them a letter, and so you may be expecting a letter soon about that. So I think, and seemed to be, we've had a couple functions over there at the senior center already, and it appears that she's getting along very well with the people that attend on a regular basis, and that's a good thing. Town clerk in the town has sent out census forms.
Just got it in the mail today.
Brought mine back today.
I just want to let people know about the census form.
Very
And if
important.
you're watching this, you probably will mail your census form back. But in it, responding to the census form is one way that the town clerk maintains her voting list.
Right.
If you choose not to send back the census form, and you haven't done it for a couple of years, you may find yourself being eliminated from the voting list. May, and again, you'd have to talk to the town clerk about this. So my suggestion is that look at the census form for a couple of reasons. One is there's information in the census form concerning parties. So in the past, going to a primary, things have changed. So and there's different things like now there's, you know, before a lot of us that weren't registered Democrat or Republican, we called ourselves independent. Well, there's an independent party now, and there's green parties, and there's libertarian parties, and there's another one that's very similar to because now what are we now? If you have
Unenrolled.
Unenrolled, yeah, that's
Unenrolled.
unenrolled, that's what
but there's another one similar to that now. So I would say take a second and look at the census. If you don't receive a census form, call the town clerk Monday through Thursday and ask her. And again, I have worked at the polls before. We got a national election coming up this year in November. I've seen kids in my daughter's class that lived in faraway places, and they came home to vote only to find that they weren't registered to vote any longer, and they're left crying at the polls because they're not registered, and they really wanted to exercise their vote. So I would say look at the census, fill the census out, return it, contact the town clerk if you have any questions. If you don't get one and you think you're registered in Sunderland but don't get a census form, you probably should call the town clerk because there's a good chance you're probably not registered. And I would also recommend this if you haven't voted in the last couple of years and you think you're a registered voter in the town of Sunderland, double check with the town clerk. It only takes a second. She has a voter list. She can look that up very quickly for you and give you an answer. And so you can either email, call, whatever, and she can do that pretty quickly for you.
It's a timely reminder because the census is not just name, address, number, and household. It adds to that voter roll, and I was happy to have an insert, big, I think it was bold green insert that went out with the census describing what the changes were. As you looked at it and go, what? Anyway, it took me twice to read, so it was good. It was good to have.
But and again, you notice that you see Secretary of State Galvin. He's been on TV of late, talking to people about registering to vote.
Yep.
And it's not a hard thing to do. But I know there's sometimes they do go through the voting list, and if you haven't voted or you haven't responded to the census, they
Parties
may
can challenge it.
They may take your name off.
Right.
And that's just the way the law.
Right.
That's the way the laws are written. Town clerk follows the laws. I mean, they don't do that on their own, so they follow the process. But I just hate for someone that, especially that wants to vote in the presidential election and the primaries that are coming up, not be able to have that opportunity.
Great point. Great point. David, anything you want to add?
We have upcoming teacher negotiation meetings this week and
Nice.
instructors the week after. I had to check which one's which because they alternate. And I did get a notice from our solar consultant about the passage which got slipped in that little omnibus spending bill about the extension for the credit. So that hopefully will aid us.
Yep, both the credits as well as at the state level, the cap,
Yes.
extending the cap.
Right, so hopefully that'll help.
That's good.
We'll see what comes out of that.
We have, we're kicking off the new year, as we always do, at the beginning of the budget discussion. I talked with Sherry today about scheduling meetings. She'll talk, I'm sure, to that point. I'd like to add only from a selectmen's update that we're looking to put together next week. There's some dates floating around right now, and keep an eye out for a discussion about the Franklin Regional Housing Authority, the FRCOG, and the Housing Committee getting together to talk about some grant rounds that are available right now for support of housing generation. Housing plan is one piece, but then how do you go about generating of those units inside of that plan? And we have a new and energized director at the Franklin Regional Housing Authority, and we have some really, I would say that my last experience with the folks from the COG, in particular on housing, was my best experience yet with the COG on any level. And
I agree, they did a great job.
and if they want to spearhead this grant round to help us with a housing generation model, RFQ steps, et cetera, the housing committee will be discussing that at length. Maybe as early as the 12th, which I think is next Tuesday. We're looking to get our meetings, putting our calendars together, if you will. And but that meeting is coming up rather quickly. That said, I guess that's it for board updates. Sherry, you had a couple weeks off, chilling, hanging out. Yeah, right.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. You have any updates?
I do. The budget memo was issued on November 30th. Budgets are due today. I'll begin compiling the first draft budget and updating local and state estimated receipts as information is available. I did contact the Finance Committee Chair, and we scheduled the first presentations for January 25th. That would be the police and fire departments on the 25th.
Is the Finance Committee interested in joint meetings again?
Yes.
Great.
Yep,
Thank you.
Francis said the 25th would be fine.
Perfect.
So we could start then. Police and fire have confirmed that they're available
Okay.
to start that night. I also have reached out to the highway, library, school, and have confirmation for February 22nd for the school department.
Oh, nice.
And I'm waiting to hear back from the highway and library, so we're on our way there.
So we've got the school department on 222. All you TV buffs, room 222. Okay.
And the other thing that I will be looking for tonight is authorization to lock into the fixed oil pricing that's being offered under the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative bid. The target price for January 2016 is under $1.50 per gallon. Prices are down, so that will help with the electricity.
That's based on, yeah, right, exactly. One goes down, the other goes up. That's for execution of contract in January through our heating season?
For fiscal year
Fiscal year. Great.
2017.
Nice.
It's too bad we didn't have a few extra tanks laying around, huh? Stuck up on
Pretty
that.
remarkable. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about, how do we try to get it under $3?
Yeah,
And it's annualized now. It's important to bear that in mind. But to your point, Jerry, it just offsets the rise of electricity.
Yeah, so.
All right.
The shell game.
Motion to accept the recommendation, town administrator, for fuel oil for the town of Sunderland.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to accept that recommendation, $1.40-ish for the year of 2017, budget cycle 2017. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, please.
Okay, and for grants, last week we submitted an application for the pilot wayfinding project through the COG. So if that's granted, that program's designed to identify most effective sign locations within the pilot area to promote increased walking. And the destinations may include landmarks, downtown centers, transit stations, and other places of interest. The project is estimated to be valued at $35,000.
So this is inside the grant framework, Sherry. It's identifying those kind of walkable locations of points of interest, whether they be historic, whether they be for exercise and recreation.
Correct.
So we're gonna kind of map out our area,
Yep.
might make sense, and then signs are a second phase, or are they part of the original?
It's part of the original,
Nice.
yeah. It's part of the Mass in Motion initiative.
Okay.
Does that get added to, as a GIS layer, I wonder, too, maybe?
That I'm not sure of, but I
I'm
can
curious.
find out.
There must be some integration.
I would
hope.
think, yeah. Right, just toss another layer in.
Yeah.
Right.
And the PATH application is in process, and we're trying to coordinate a meeting with the Housing Redevelopment Authority and FERCog for sometime next week.
Nice.
Also, North Main Street reconstruction, the planning board's going to hold a public forum on the 12th at 7 o'clock. John Morgan and Paul Gerton from CHA will be present. And CHA has prepared preliminary responses to the comments that they received from the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Historical Commission, and Pathways Committee. And those are in your packets for your review as well. There's a lot of information there, so.
Yeah. Actually, this, topically, it looks like a good read, some modification of parking, some widths, some requirements, some honest responses saying, listen, because of federal
Yeah,
monies, you can't do
it,
certain things.
right.
But
Right.
other areas, it seems like there is at least flexibility.
And that's it. That's all I have.
All right. We got one correspondence, and it really puts the board mainly on notice more than anything. And we don't accept this, actually. This is an elected position, but we are on notice now that there may be some steps coming up for a replacement library trustee. So you want to read that?
Yes. This is dated January 4th from Elizabeth Berry. Excuse me, to Elizabeth Berry. Dear Beth, please be advised that on January 4th, 2016, I certified a vacancy on the Sunderland Public Library trustees due to the resignation of Mrs. Ellen Kroll. Ms. Kroll's resignation is attached with this letter. Her term ends in 2016 at the annual election, and the interim position will be filled through an appointment process. The procedure to fill this position is in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11. The library trustees shall, within 1 month notice, give written notice to the Board of Selectmen of said vacancy. The Selectmen, along with the remaining library trustees, shall, after 1 week's notice, fill the vacancy by roll call vote in an open meeting. The Board of Selectmen shall fill the vacancy if the library trustees fail to notify within the specified time. A majority of the votes of the combined boards entitles the vacancy to be filled. Please note that both boards need to post this meeting in accordance with the open meeting law, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 39. Please feel free to contact me with any questions.
So again, elected official triggers, certain elected officials' resignations trigger a response that includes the Board of Selectmen as their interim appointing body in conjunction with their authority trustees or whatever they are. This happens to be one of those vacancies. So sometime here before February rolls around, we'll likely have a meeting that will co-appoint through roll call vote a vacancy to be filled just until the election. Anything else for tonight?
I just remind everybody that I think winter's here.
Yes, yep, I think
And with that, we do have an on-street parking
Yep.
ban in effect. And also, be aware of your neighbors, especially elderly neighbors. If you, don't be afraid to look in on them if you haven't seen them for a while. It's just that time of year we have to, it's good that one advantage of living in a small community is that we kind of watch out for one another, so.
It's well put, Tom. We are in that season that some people love, some people hate, but still it requires a fair amount of vigilance, so.
Absolutely.
Especially when those thermometers dip.
Yeah.
It's going down to 2 degrees now.
Yeah, getting down there.
So it's gonna be cold.
Perfect. Okay, our next meeting here is on, it's a week from tonight. Again, 6:30 is our starting time now. So anybody who's like half an hour late going, what did I miss? 6:30 is the starting time. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Lacey, for working the camera and keeping Chris honest a little bit too. It's a full-time job. Believe me, I know. Okay.
Oh, I think we got him.
Okay, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0. You can call us out at 7:24, please. And thanks again so much, everybody.